Hello, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my channel if this is the first time, but welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. But welcome to my channel if this is the first time. So, this is a tag video. So this is a tag video created by Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, an awesome channel and a lovely man. And he's done this original tag and it's got 26 prompts in it. And he's tagged 26 people, and I'm one of them. So thanks, Greg, for tagging me. This is a really cool tag, which is a book tag that is called Hot or Not. And each prompt comes from a letter of the alphabet, and each letter's got this prompt. And then basically, he wants the people he's tagged to do a gut reaction to the prompt, but obviously book related. So I'm going to do my best, but there's a couple that I've struggled with when I look through it quickly and some I don't really understand. So we'll get there in a minute. So let's go. A, audiobooks. Yeah, I like audiobooks in principle, but I haven't had a lot of interaction with them. So I'm going to say hot because the idea of audiobooks, but if it was the actual reality of how much I use audiobooks, it'd be more like a not. But I'm going to go hot because I like the idea of them. And like one day I'll probably use them a lot more. B, Bildungsroman, dealing with a person's formative years or spiritual education, kind of like stories about coming of age kind of stories. So yes, a hot from me. I think they are often really cool stories, and some of my favourite stories when I was young were like that. And yeah, it's just there's a nice plot device that can produce some good stories. So I'm going with hot on that one. C, children's books. Children's books are very special. So Greg makes a reference in his video about reading children's books to children, and he says he hasn't got children. But I did have children. They're not children anymore, but I did have children, and it was lovely reading to them. And if I ever become a granddad, then it would be nice to read to the grandchildren. And I sometimes wonder about collecting Mr. Men books again, because Mr. Men books are really cool, and I used to love Dr. Seuss books, and I'd like to go in a bit older. I'd like to read all of the Earthsea books by Ursula K. Le Guin, and I've only read the first one. There's definitely a space in my heart for children's books, so go with a hot on that one. D, digital. So I've said on the channel that I prefer paperback books to digital books, but absolutely get why they're important and why it's quite cool that you can manipulate the settings to suit your needs. So absolutely get it. So I'm going to say hot because I might not use them, but I want to fully endorse them on here. E, for experimental. Experimental, I don't really know what that means. I don't know if I've read much experimental fiction. Does it mean things like Clockwork Orange? Is that experimental? Or is that not experimental enough? Like Naked Lunch? If it's stuff like that, then I'd say hot. But I may be ignorant of proper experimental books. So please suggest in the comments what could be experimental. Ralph's making a lot of noise. Are you right there? F, fantasy. Yes, big hot. I've read a lot of fantasy. I will continue to read fantasy. I think it's a great genre with some really cool stories in it and awesome characters. And yes. Fantasy, big hot. G, graphic novel. Yes, it's a big hot for me. I'm a big fan of graphic novels. I have got a small collection, which there's going to be a video coming up on the channel in February, I think it is, of my graphic novel books. And it'll probably be well out of date by then. But anyway, there's a video coming up as part of the library tour with my graphic novels. And if you just as a little hint, earlier this year, I read a fantastic graphic novel called Daydreamer. And look up the book review I did of that, because it's such a good book. So Daydreamer, awesome graphic novel. So yes, big hot for me on that one. H is for horror, and some of my first books I ever read, like the Stephen King books and The Howling and I'd say The Invisible Man, you could class that as horror. When I was really young, I read those, and I've been reading horror now and again ever since, and I'm reading a lot more of it lately as well. So yeah, big hot for me on horror. I is inspirational, and I think, judging from what Greg said in the video, he's talking about self-care, I think, and like those kind of like how to improve your life kind of books, which I don't relate to at all. So it would be a not, except for the fact that I think you can also interpret it as inspirational ways of looking at the world. So like books on ethics and philosophy and politics and morality, that kind of thing. So some of the books I've got on atheism, that kind of thing, which I find really inspiring. So yeah, I'd say it's a hot for that kind of thing. So books on ethics and morality and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm going to go with that for the I. J, journalism. Yes, good journalism is essential for an honest and free society. So big up to the journalists of the world, and we need more honest journalism, and they can be really important in society. Sadly, there is a strand of journalism that's more sensationalist bollocks, isn't there? And also sort of right-wing nonsense where they just lie as well. So you know, there's two sides to the coin, but I'm going to go hot for journalism because of the good side of journalists and the fact that we do need them. K is for kitsch. Has a popular or sentimental appeal. This is the one I didn't really understand. So Greg says in the video that he's talking about the Hallmark Hall of Fame. So I looked that up because I didn't really know what that meant. And I still don't really know what that meant because it looked like that was movies. So I don't really understand the prompt. So I'm just going to take it from that sentence. Kitsch has a popular or sentimental appeal. So if it's like airport novels and that kind of thing, I think you can find some good stuff in there sometimes. It's probably more of a not than a hot for me. So it's probably more of a not. But that's because I'm guessing it might be things like James Patterson maybe and Colleen Hoover and stuff like that, which I don't really read. But one of my favourite books, The Martian, would have been in that kind of airport novels rack kind of situation. So it depends on the book, I guess. But for most of those kind of books, it wouldn't be for me. So I'll go with a not in general for the kitsch thing, if that's the right thing, if that's what he means. L is for library. I love libraries. We've got lots of libraries in Portsmouth. And I think it's awesome we've got lots of libraries. Our big library, the Central Library in town, is fantastic. And the University Library was amazing. And I miss the University Library. It's massive and brilliant. But we've got a few libraries in Portsmouth, and I need to return some books. M is for mystery. I could go really meta and not answer the question, so it remains a mystery. Eh? Well, I'm not going to do that. So, mystery. And I'm going to say a hot, because by and large, bit of mystery in the novel can be really good, and mystery novels, as in murder mysteries and stuff like that, can be quite cool. So I'm going with a hot on that one. N is for non-fiction. Non-fiction November. I'm reading some non-fiction this month, and once I've finished reading that book, I'll show you what that book is. Hold on. This book here, which is really good. Once I've finished reading this, I'm going to read some non-fiction. So there's 2 books I'm going to read next, and then I'm going to try and get some buddy reads going after I've read the 2 non-fiction books I want to read. So yeah, non-fiction is a big plus. So all my Marx Brothers books, my books on Monty Python, my books on my musicians and bands that I love, my politics books, my history books, philosophical books, tons of non-fiction that I'd love, and my books on the cartoonists, my books on my animated cartoons books as well, books on Tex Avery and Chuck Jones, Max Fleischer, all that kind of stuff. I've got a collection of those as well. Got lots of non-fiction books that I love, actually. And maybe I should do another video on non-fiction books. Don't know. O is for Omnibus. And that's a funny one, because I love the idea of omnibus books. But when I do get an omnibus book, I go, oh, wow, look, I've got all these books in this omnibus book. I always wanted to get the individual books anyway, thinking I haven't really got the book because I've got this collection of books in a book, and I was like, I've still got to get the book. So what's the point in getting your omnibus book then? So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. But I'm going to say hot because I love the idea of them, but I just don't seem to take in the fact that I've got that book. A bit weird. P is for poetry, and I love poetry. I've self-published 2 books of poetry. There's one on the go at the minute as well, and I like reading poetry. I tend to like the less flowery poetry, so I like the I like it when it kind of drives home a truth with some really nice lines in it that go, yeah, that's nice, rather than somebody just playing with a thesaurus. But yeah, poetry can be a beautiful thing. It's definitely hot for me. Q for quests. When the protagonist goes on a quest, physical or spiritual. Yeah, absolutely. I was saying earlier that I like fantasy, and there's lots of quests that appear in fantasy books, so it's a big hot for me. R for romance. I guess it's probably a not, because romance can be a nice part of a book, but if it's the main thread, then I'm probably not going to be that interested in reading it, I guess. So yeah, there are some books I've really loved that have had a romantic element, but yeah, not just a romance. And romance as a genre is not something I'd go for. So it's a not for me on that one. S for science fiction. Massive hot. I love science fiction so much. So most of my favourite authors are science fiction authors. I really love all the tropes. I love... I just love it. Just love it to death. If you're wondering why I love science fiction, then look up why I love science fiction, Gareth Howells on YouTube, and it'll probably come up. I've done a few videos about why I love science fiction. T for translation. Books translated from one language into another. Yes, there's some really good translated fiction out there, so I definitely recommend that. And I've had some really good successes with that. So yeah, and the journey continues. The journey of discovery continues. Absolutely hot for me on translated fiction. Übermensch, the Superman or the extraordinary human. So a bit of Nietzsche going on here. As a character, like Superman and like Dr. Manhattan, stuff like that, is interesting to explore. I don't think, because some people just think, oh, wow, Superman's a boring superhero because he's too good. No, because you can play around with obstacles that get in his way and the ways that it's not as simple as just him being superhuman or whatever. So, yeah, you can do things with it. It's a hot for me on that one. V for Victorian, so literature from 1837 to 1901. I'd like to have had more successes with Victorian literature. So, I like Frankenstein. I like Dracula. Jules Verne. I liked Jules Verne. Yeah, I'm struggling a bit now. I tend to like stuff that's after that, really, but I don't know. I don't know if it's probably more of a not than a hot, but out of principle, I'd like to keep trying and finding new stuff that I like. W for Western. Thanks to Michael K. Vaughan's June on the Range, I discovered that Westerns can be really cool. So it's definitely a hot, because now I've read some Westerns. I've liked most of what I've read, so I'll go with hot for Western. X-rated. I'm not really interested in X-rated fiction like that. It may be if it was a bit of a chapter in something, then yeah, fine, but not as a genre. I'm not particularly interested. Why young adult? I've read some things I thought might be young adult, but I didn't know for sure. I don't look for young adult books, but in principle, I haven't got an issue at all. Don't know. I'm going to say hot just because some of the things I've liked might be considered young adult. It just seems fairer to say hot rather than not, in my ignorance. Z or Z is zeitgeist. So books that reflect the spirit of the mood of the time, which is a great use of the letter Z. And I like books that reflect the time. So like maybe sort of like a commentary on young people being obsessed with the phones, or books about reality TV, or books about the current situation with the record industry, with crowdfunding, and where do record labels sit and all that sort of stuff. The lack of faith in truth nowadays, and the lack of respect for experts and all that kind of thing. Like popular science, all those kind of things are really cool to read. So it's hot for that kind of thing. So there we are. That's my response to that. I think it's a really good tag. 26 prompts. You're supposed to do it quite quickly and speak from the gut. So I spoke from the gut, and I also found it quite amusing that I was using my hands and it was kind of spilling my tea as I was doing it. Small things can please you. I don't know who to tag because there's literally 26 people tagged. So what I'm going to do is I'll do the video and I'll see who's not been tagged and tag a few of those. So tag half a dozen people or something. I don't think we should be all tagging 26 people, because then the whole world would be tagged and the internet would just be this tag. So that would probably create some sort of crack in the time-space continuum. Thanks a lot for watching this. Good night.